Welcome to Brandstorm, the podcast that talks to the people behind America's brands. I'm Dan Trzynski, president of Platypus Advertising and Design.
And I'm Nancy Christopher, PR director at Platypus. Our guest today has been building luxury custom homes starting at $1 million for more than 33 years in Central Florida. 10 years ago, David Konkol drew from his knowledge and expertise in the business to write a really good book called Building a Luxury Custom Home, and it's been the best marketing tool he's ever used to promote his business. So today, we'd like to explore how becoming a published author could enhance your brand. Welcome to Brandstorm, David.
Hi, Dan and Nancy. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, and I understand you and Dan go way, way back.
Yeah, more than 33 years. It's more like 53 years.
That's right, since we've been about 5 years old.
Right.
That's so cool. But you ended up in Central Florida.
I did. I moved here straight out of college.
So you grew up in a family of home builders, so it's probably in your blood. But what made you decide to write a book about the tips and traps of building a dream home?
About 10 years ago, I was on an early morning run with my good friend Todd, who happened to be one of my homeowners, who's the director of publishing at a local company. And he asked me if I ever thought about writing a book. And I chuckled and I said, Todd, no. Most days I have difficulty in just writing a sentence.
Right. I know that feeling.
Todd said, don't worry about that. He said, all kinds of people write books who aren't writers. There's presidents, CEOs, athletes. And he said, yes, even custom home builders. He said, I work with talented professionals every day who have a wealth of knowledge who can share that information with the general public. So as we continued to run, Todd said, Dave, I don't know if you remember this, but 7 years ago, when my wife and I first came to meet you, we didn't know the first thing about building a home. My father was a professor, so we always lived on-campus housing. And my wife is from Germany, and they never owned a home. So I went to the library and I checked out 12 books. When we showed up at our first meeting, I had 6 pages of single-spaced questions. And you were so patient, Dave. He said you took 4 hours to answer all my questions on the first 3 pages.
And never rolled your eyes once, right?
Not once. He said, then we had to schedule another 4-hour meeting so we could then answer the questions on the other 3 pages. And he said, look, Dave, I think there's a lot of homeowners who have questions, but no answers about what to do when you want to build a custom home. He said, I still have those questions on my laptop. He said, why don't we take all of those questions and I'll help you develop a book outline. At first, I liked the idea. I thought this would save me a lot of time so I wouldn't have to answer all of these questions 25 to 30 times a year. And I also thought it would save my owners time and also would give them a value add. At the time, I didn't realize that writing a book would set me above my competition.
Absolutely, because, you just don't think of homeowners as authors. So how long did it take you to do this?
It took me 14 months, about an average of 10 hours a week from start to finish.
Wow.
My book has 49 chapters and it has 7 checklists. And when the first draft was complete, I learned that I was only about 35% done with the process. So this is how I did it. Once I had my outline, my personal assistant created a 3-ring binder for me. And she printed the title chapter on every page. And I carried that 3-ring binder with me wherever I went. And when I had an idea for a chapter, I would add a bullet point to that chapter. And when I had enough bullet points, I would dictate that chapter into a tape recorder. And when I would dictate, I wouldn't worry about sentence structure or grammar. So my assistant would take that tape recorder and she would clean it up and then give it back to me in a printed version. So initially, I only had about 35 chapters, but the more that I wrote, the more ideas that I got. In fact, one day, I met a prospect named Ross at a job site. And about 25 minutes into the meeting, he kept looking at his watch. And I said, Ross, are you expecting someone shortly? And he said, yeah. He said, I'm actually going to meet 5 more builders today, and I'm going to get 6 bids on my home. Now, Ross only had about 20% of his plans completed. He didn't have any of his selections or specifications. And at the end of our meeting, he wanted me to give him a bid.
So he's going to just about waste a whole bunch of other people's time, too.
Precisely. So if he would get 6 bids, we would be comparing apples to oranges to potatoes to carrots, and it would just add to his confusion. So when I got back to my office, I wrote him a nice email and said, Ross, I think it's a good idea that you perhaps interview 6 builders, but what I would suggest you do is narrow it down to 1 or 2 and then work with a focused effort to be able to develop your plans, finish the specifications, and then get a bid. So after I finished the email to Ross, I came up with a great idea for another chapter. How many bids should I get on my new home?
Good idea, right.
So how did you use the book initially? Did you give it to customers who were thinking of building a home? Did you try to sell it? What happened then?
When we first published, we immediately couriered a copy to every one of our top prospects. And within 2 weeks, 2 of those prospects called back and actually began the process that was somewhat dormant for a while. So it gave me a reason to be able to touch them. And by delivering my book, it gave them a reason to read it and re-engage in the process. I also mailed a copy to every one of the homeowners that I had built for, and I asked them if they would consider forwarding that to someone who may be in need of my services. So one day, I get a call from Jennifer. And Jennifer said that about 6 months ago, she went into her neighbor's home and saw my book on the coffee table. And she asked Ann, what's that? And she said, my builder wrote a book about what you need to know about building a custom home. And Jennifer said, well, my husband and I are going to build a home. So Ann said, here, take my copy. So Ann just gave Jennifer an unsolicited personal endorsement by handing my book to Jennifer.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I have Jennifer on the phone, and she says, I gave the book back to Ann, but I remember reading in chapter 2 that you should call your builder before you meet with the architect. And since we have an appointment with the architect today at 3 p.m., I thought I would give you a call. So I sent Jennifer her own copy, and she actually became a client of mine.
Awesome.
How tough is it to get published, David?
Well, I researched getting it published by a publisher, but I learned that it would add about 6 months to the process. I knew that I wasn't going to be a New York Times bestseller. So I took the route of self-publishing. And the key to self-publishing is to make the book look as though it was produced by a publisher. I see a lot of self-published books that are bad. I mean, like really bad. And that can actually hurt a person's reputation and the product or offerings that they sell.
Yeah, and yours is hardbound with a nice jacket. It looks great.
Well, thank you. So I wasn't interested in selling books, trying to make $3 to $4 per copy.
Right.
But what I was interested was securing more homes to build that I wouldn't normally be able to get in front of people. And I was able to do that by utilizing my book.
So what's been the biggest challenge in this entire process?
I'd have to say patience. When my draft was completed, I said to my friend Todd, so when do we publish? As I mentioned earlier, we were only 35% done with the project at that point. On most projects, I have the philosophy, ready, fire, aim. And I find that a lot of projects just take too long in the aiming stage.
Right.
So it was painstaking to proof and then edit, design the interior, design the cover, then go back and proof and edit that. And then when that got done, we had to go back and proof and edit that. But I was committed to having a book of excellence.
I have a theory, David. Even though you wrote this book and you answer all these questions about how to build your dream home, I bet you people still ask you questions. Am I right?
They do, but they don't ask me as many questions.
Okay.
Perfect.
Now, instead of 4 hours, it only takes an hour.
So besides time, what kind of investment goes into this? So what can you expect to actually have in cash to be able to do this?
It cost me $8,000 to print my first copy. That included the jacket design, the editing, the proofing. But my second copy only cost between $3 and $7.
Right.
When I first published, I printed up 2,000 copies, so I was able to get those for about $3 a piece.
Sure.
And I contend that $3 to $7 is less expensive than even a nice brochure. So I'm currently on my 4th printing, and every time I do a new printing, I do a new cover. I update pictures of my homes. I update the content. It gives me a reason to circle back with homeowners that I've built for or other people who can help leverage by sharing that I'm excited about my 4th printing and the updated version.
You've had your book in the market 10 years now. Do people find you on the internet as well? I mean, I know you distributed it to all of your customers and past customers, but do people find you on the internet and get in touch with you as well?
They do. Yes, that's one way that they come through us. They also come through us, through our website, and we have an opportunity. If somebody goes to our website, they can register their name and email address, so then we can send them a copy as well.
And how's it helped your business?
It's been the best marketing tool that I've ever used. So my book actually builds trust and it alleviates fears. So at the beginning of the book, we have a section called Before You Begin. And in that section, it describes that I grew up in central Wisconsin on a farm, that I've been married to my bride for 26 years, that I have 8 children, and that I am an average, real person trying to do an excellent job.
No, you're not with 8 kids. You're above average with 8 children, I have to tell you.
Well, actually, I married way up. So in the center of the book, I have 49 chapters that answers questions that homeowners have, and I call that alleviating fears. So it's the 2 primary reasons why people are willing to invest $1 to $5 million with me: trust and competence. It's also helped me in my business because it separates me from my competition. There's no other builder in this market who has written a book. It also helps me protect my margins, and it also helps me to close the deal. It makes me an expert in my market, and it's also made the building process much easier. So my book is a value add. It's not propaganda. It's not a brochure on steroids, but it's a value add to someone who's considering building a home.
Do you make it a prerequisite to working with you that they have to read the book?
Oh, that's a great question, Dan. I don't, and I never ask people if they've read my book.
Okay.
But I tell people this. I say that it's about a 2-hour read, and I said some of the best processes, some of the best homes that we've ever built for people are the ones who've taken the time to read it. It helps set expectations, and it really allows me to give them my best.
Has it made you somewhat of a celebrity in your area? I mean, have you made appearances with the media?
Actually, it has made me a celebrity. When I first published my book, I actually sent it out to every one of my competitive home builders in my market, which was 35 top custom home builders. And my friend said, well, aren't you worried they're going to take your ideas from you? And I said, no. I said, because I am the author and the first publisher of this information. And that was affirmed by, I was meeting with a couple one day, and they were telling me this story, that they had met with a guy named Larry, who I knew was one of my competitors, just the week before. And Larry was describing a process that I had written in my book. And when he got done describing that process to them, they said, oh, yeah, we read that in Dave's book. And I think he was a little bit humbled. So I don't worry about it. I don't worry that my competition's got the information. It's actually elevated me in my market.
Now, I read your book quite a while ago, right when it first came out, but I think it also helps you from a standpoint of if other people ask the same questions of somebody else that you've set up, that this is the way the process should go, and they hear something different, well, then that just adds to your credibility again.
It does. So it's one thing to be able to tell someone a fact. It's another thing to put it in a book of high quality that looks like it's published from a publisher, and for them to read it, then it has so much more validity than if I'm trying to tell them something.
You know, it all sounds great, David, but are there any downsides to writing a book like this?
The only downside that I had was time. As I mentioned, it took me 14 months, about 10 hours a week. My family lost a little piece of me during that time, but it was well worth it.
Right, I can imagine. I mean, to have the passion to do that for 14 months, I think is a real accomplishment. It really is.
So how was the book distributed?
This was the key to my success, learning how to position my book in my market. So anyone who calls our office, my staff is trained to ask them if they got a copy of Dave's book. And if they say no, we ask them if we could send them a copy as a gift for inquiring about our company. And over the years, we've always got a response, yes. We've never heard no, because people want something for free and of value that can help them in their process. So my staff is trained that when that conversation is over, they draft an email and they send it to me on my iPhone, and I approve the letter. And they're instructed to be able to get my book on their doorstep by 5 o'clock. If the prospect calls at 3:10, my book is on their doorstep at 5 o'clock. And it really impresses homeowners.
Sure.
I'm the only builder who's ever written a book in my market. And We got it on their doorstep by 5 o'clock with information about our company. And in the letter, we've confirmed our first appointment for the following week. So I asked my builder friends, why do you think that I schedule the meeting the following week, even if I have time this week? And most of them say, well, you want to act like you're too busy. And I said, no, it's because it gives them a chance to read my book over the weekend. And I've tracked it over the years. And over 50% of the people that walk into my office, the first thing they say is, Dave, I read your book this weekend. And I just think, this is so unfair to my 35 competitors in my market because they've now spent 2 hours learning about what I value, that I'm a person of excellence, and they get to know me. We also do targeted book drops. So I identified the 20 nicest lakes in Orlando, and we would determine if they were either going to be needing major renovation or would be a tear down. And we capture their name and their address, and we do a book drop on their doorstep. And in the letter, it says, you have a great piece of property. If you're looking for a builder who's committed to excellence, please accept this book as a gift. So I did an 800 count book drop, which cost me about $5 a piece. So I invested $4,000. And 6 months later, I get a phone call from Haley. And Haley said, I got your book 6 months ago, and I just finished reading it. And when I got done with the book, I told my husband, we found our builder. You see, Dave, we've built homes before, we've done remodeling jobs, and we've hired contractors. And I told my husband that this guy is so organized and he has such a system that we have to meet with him. That home ended up being a $4.3 million home. And I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity had I not put my book on their doorstep.
Wow.
So that paid for my investment over 100 times over. And that doesn't account for the other 799 that would be sitting on someone's shelf. So every month, we also identify the lakefront lots that have sold. And what we'll do is we'll mail a book and introduce ourselves, outlining that if they're looking for a builder, here's a gift for their use.
Well, that's a great idea.
We also do parade of homes. And my greeters are trained that when someone walks in the front door, they're to ask, are you thinking about building or remodeling a home anytime soon? And if they say yes, they walk over to the table, pick up my book, and they say, David, the builder of this home, wrote a book about what you need to know to build a custom home. And we'd like to give this to you as a gift for coming out to our model today. Now, normally we sell this for $19.95, but we have a parade special that we're offering for $10. And by the way, we donate all book proceeds to Habitat for Humanity. But we'd like to give this to you as a gift for no charge. And by the way, David's in the kitchen if you want to say hello to him. So we capture their name, and often the prospect will come to me, ask me to autograph it. We have a good conversation. And every year I get an email or a phone call within a few weeks indicating that they read my book and they want to talk to me about building their new home. We also created an app for a free download. And on a Friday afternoon, I emailed it to 502 of my email contacts. And my former neighbor forwarded it to a doctor that she knew. And on Tuesday morning, the doctor's wife calls me and says, my husband stayed up all night reading your book, and we would like to meet with you tomorrow. I met with them the following day, and at the end of the meeting, they gave me the soft hire. Now, 2 weeks later, the doctor shared with me, he said, Dave, what I really liked about this process was that I got to know who you were before you came into my home, which told me that he was a very private individual. And he said, the other 3 builders that I interviewed, which tells me that he was very thorough in his research, couldn't answer some of the questions that you answered in your book. So during that interview process, I could tell that he wanted to hire me.
It's obviously been a fabulous marketing tool for you. What advice would you give to others who are thinking about writing a book the way you did?
I would say absolutely, without question, write a book. It's the best marketing tool that I've ever used, and it's helped me promote my business like nothing else I've ever tried. I would say find a good coach to spearhead the project and write a book to promote your business.
And that could be any business. It doesn't have to be home builders. I think
absolutely.
If you're a subject matter expert, and I think, in the world of content marketing today and self-publishing via Amazon or whatever, it's probably much easier today than, besides the time process, than what you experienced 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Do you have plans to write again?
In fact, I wrote a second book, and it's called In-House, Designing Your Dream Home Room by Room. And it's a coffee table format. And it actually takes a prospect through the process of every room in the home and special features by taking a builder with 35 years experience, taking them by the hand, and being able to describe the kinds of things that they should or should not consider when designing their home. So I use both of my books as a 1-2 punch. If prospects share with me that they read my first book, then we give them a copy of my second book. And my third book, I will write in one weekend. And the key to be able to write a book is to have a really tight outline, and I'll dictate the whole thing in one weekend. And the theme of it's going to be on the book series, What to Expect When You're Expecting, and mine will be on the theme of What to Expect When Building.
Great idea. Great idea. And that's probably takes you through every single day of the build, I imagine. So at week 1, you do this. At 3 months, you do this.
That's right. Because as I've learned throughout this process, if you tell people what you're going to do and then you do it, then they're at ease. And this book will take them through every step of the way. So if they're in the drywall stage, all they have to do is open up a simple book and they'll be able to see what's coming next.
Well, that's great. It's very entrepreneurial. Much success to you. I think what you've done is fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being our guest. If people wanted to get a copy of your book or just contact you, what's the best way to connect?
By my email address. It's david@konkolcustom.com. And Konkol is spelled Konkol. That's david@konkolcustom.com.
And you have a really good Facebook page too, Dave. Just because of our personal connection for the longest time, I follow your page and see the beautiful homes that you're building. So if people want to see pictures, I'd also recommend looking you up there too.
Well, thank you.
Thanks again, David. And if you like what you've heard today, please don't forget to review, share, and subscribe to Brandstorm.
This is Dan Trzynski along with Nancy Christopher at Platypus Advertising and Design, an awesome company that creates perceptions that influence choice for a variety of regional, national, and even global brands on a daily basis. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode of Brandstorm.